Bristling with guns, protected by thick belts of armor, the Battleship is the most imposing surface warship ever built. This video ordnance program looks at the U.S. Navy's Iowa-class battleships, last of a fearsome breed. Battleships were the product of a half-century of revolutionary change in warship design. From the first ironclad, the Monitor of Civil War fame, to the imposing dreadnoughts built on the eve of the First World War, warship design had never before seen such radical change in so short a period of time. Each new generation of warship had thicker armor and bigger guns. The First World War was the heyday of battleship design, culminating in the clash of the grand fleets of Britain and Germany at Jutland. In the 1920s and the 1930s, navies remained convinced that all future fleets would be built around these impressive warships. Not to be so. During World War II, the battleship quickly became overshadowed by yet another radical innovation in warship design: the aircraft carrier. The battleship's power came from its big guns, the carrier's power from the bombs and torpedoes dropped by its airplanes. The battleship's guns had an effective range of about 25 miles, but the carrier could strike from hundreds of miles away, far outside the range of the battleship's guns. This was amply demonstrated at Pearl Harbor, the Coral Sea, the Battle for Midway, and many other engagements. The age of the battleship, the age of the big gun, were over. The epitome of the battleship was the U.S. Navy's Iowa-class battleships. Although bigger battleships were constructed, Japan's Yamato class, the Iowas were the most modern and potent battleships ever built, combining excellent speed, firepower, and protection with modern innovations such as radar. The hegemony of the aircraft carrier did not remove the battleship from the scene. A new role began to develop for the battleship: shore bombardment. Amphibious assaults were at the heart of many of the great battles of the Pacific War, and it was the battleships that provided the firepower to attack hostile beach fortifications before the invasion. After the war, most battleships were scrapped. Others became floating museums, and a few of the most modern were mothballed. When the Korean War broke out in 1950, the Navy quickly brought its newest battleships, the Iowas, out of mothballs. They fought again with distinction. Dogged by their high cost of operation, the Navy could ill afford the battleships in peacetime. But when war broke out, the Navy always knew where to find them. This was the case again during the Vietnam War. The defense buildup of the Reagan years revived interest in the battleships. By the 1980s, the high cost of shipbuilding meant that a battleship could be refurbished much lower cost than building a much smaller new warship, such as a destroyer.
The modernization of a battleship is a relatively simple thing to do at a very modest cost. So the modernization aspect of a destroyer or a small cruiser, as compared to what you might achieve in a battleship, is really not a good comparison. The characteristic that the battleship brings to the naval balance is enormous survivability and enormous destructive power within its gun range, supported by a very large support capability of the ships that would be a part of the battle group that a battleship constituted. And when you put that all together, You can't find that resident in any other kind of ship today, save the aircraft carrier. The battleships, although in chronological age, are perhaps old ships. But first of all, one needs to recognize that the age of a ship is more tied to the number of years it is being used than it is in total number of years that it has been built or in existence. So for the 30 years that it was mothballed, the aging of the ship was relatively slow compared to what it would be if you were continually using it. So set aside age to some degree. In the modernization, we looked to provide what was available in terms of new missile systems, particularly as it related to surface-to-surface engagement capabilities that were existent at the time the ship was being recommissioned. Internally, we have improved its command and control systems in order to sail with the modern battleship battle group that it was envisioned to sail with. Modern destroyers, modern cruisers, so that they were all compatible in information exchange and support of various naval operations, be they in the open ocean or in the littorals of countries such as we found in the Persian Gulf.
Once again, the Iowa-class battleships re-entered Navy service, training a new generation of sailors on the naval equipment first used a generation before. Was to form the center of a naval battle group in place of an aircraft carrier. Its new peacetime role was to show the flag in hotspots around the globe, where its old-fashioned armor made it nearly impervious to the new threats posed by advanced naval mines and anti-ship missiles.
Certainly when you go into a port, everybody looks at you and they know exactly what your business is. Nobody ever mistook a battleship for anything other than a battleship. Its guns, it bristles, it looks impressive. It's the perfect ship to show the flag wherever you go.
The battleship's unique role in the U.S. Navy centers around two key features: its thick belts of armor and its massive firepower.
I think the battleship story is pretty much focused on the 16-inch guns. People have always been enamored by them. Their presence is awesome, and their firepower is equally impressive. And the armor plate, the survivability of this ship makes it a very unique platform for strike warfare. Tomahawk technology, which was amply demonstrated throughout the Persian Gulf crisis, proves that the decision to bring these ships back was vindicated.
Other ships have Tomahawk and Harpoon missiles, but only one class of ships has the 16-inch guns. These are the largest and most powerful weapons of their type ever deployed on an American warship.
.16-inch guns is a long-range naval gun. No other gun in the Navy can shoot as far as it can. We have the ability to send such a large amount of ordnance downrange. We like to go for heavy dug-in emplacements, and we're doing shore bombardment. We're good against armor because of the high explosive capabilities. For the 5-inch gun, it's shorter range. It's a lot lighter projectile. You can't put as much ordnance on the target. Originally, these guns were designed to engage other battleships. So we have the capability of shooting a 2,700-pound armor-piercing projectile, which can be quite devastating. I don't think that there's any ship on the high seas now that could withstand a hit from a 16-inch armor-piercing.
On first glance, the 16-inch guns seem quite small in proportion to the rest of the ship. But the bulk of these massive gun turrets is largely hidden. They extend as tall as a 4-story building deep into the bowels of the ship. The turret systems are a maze of ammunition handling equipment, ammunition elevators, and precision traverse equipment. The ammunition, weighing over a ton, must be mechanically loaded. The lower levels of the turret supply projectiles and propellant to the turret crew. Inside the massive turret, 3 separate crews load each gun in their own compartments. The extreme noise of the gun compartments means that a crew must use a set of carefully studied hand signals to coordinate their action. On their signal, the 1-ton projectile is loaded. Then it is followed by a succession of silk-lined propellant bags. The usual load is 6 bags, some 650 pounds of propellant to launch the enormous projectile. These bags of propellant are then carefully pushed into the gun's massive breech by a mechanical rammer. Only after the bag charges are securely loaded inside the gun chamber can the breech be closed. The extreme care exercised by the gun crew is due to the potential hazards of handling so much explosive propellant in so confined a space. The sailors carefully check at each stage of the operation to be sure that the bag charges are properly seated in the chamber. The rammer is withdrawn, the breech closed, the gun is ready to fire. But the heavy firepower of the 16-inch guns is only part of the story. The incredible accuracy of the weapons is the other part. The problem is to deliver a 2,000-pound projectile to targets 25 miles from a moving ship that is rocking and rolling. A heavy ocean swell can lift the battleship enough to throw off its aim. One of the most remarkable accomplishments in the design of the Iowa-class battleships was its fire control system. Gyroscopes help determine every movement of the ship in relation to the target and feed the data to a mechanical fire control computer.
The equipment that we've got here, which is the Mark 38 fire control system, is the designation for this, is the original equipment that came on the battleship. We're talking late 30s, early 40s technology. It's not anything like your modern computers. Someone would say computer, they think of something with digits, you know, television screens, monitors, keyboards, that sort of thing. Here we do all our computations using mechanical devices. And our computer is quite large, but it has only one function, and that's to solve the fire control problem. You can't play any video games on it or anything like that. So the technology, even though it is old, I think it's still just as complex as anything today, considering what methods and devices they used to be able to do those mathematical computations back in the late 40s.
Since World War I, fine adjustments to aim were made by forward observers, or spotter aircraft flown from catapults in the rear of the battleship. One of the innovations on the refurbished battleships was the substitution of unmanned, remotely piloted vehicles, called RPVs, in place of the manned spotting aircraft.
The RPV as a system that's been at sea since approximately 1986 and probably was used most effectively in the last two years. Wisconsin first had our RPV detachment come on board and work up in the June time frame, worked together as a team and deployed in August. We carried 5 air vehicles. The air vehicles have a wingspan of about 14 feet. They use a 2-cycle engine. Rather loud. and carry about 40 liters of fuel. She can operate effectively out in excess of 70 miles. But the best part is she can provide real-time data back to the ship and remain essentially undetected. We operated with the RPV over hostile territory, and we're virtually undetected. And that provides a great capability for our 16-inch guns. The RPV can be used for reconnaissance, intelligence gathering, targeting, spotting. It provides a great extension of Wisconsin's capabilities. And the key is that real-time data link, day or night.
The RPVs feed a television signal back to the warship, allowing the fire control crew to precisely see where their projectiles have fallen. Corrections can then be made to put the next rounds precisely on target. The 16 inches are not the only guns on the battleship. There are also 5-inch guns, which supplement the firepower of the main gun turrets.
You're not going to want to employ 16-inch guns on a soft target. In other words, some targets aren't worthy of 16-inch guns because why waste the large amount of ordnance on it when you can go after it with a 5-inch? But then one thing you need to consider is the range factor because of the extensive range of the 16-inch.
Iowa-class battleships in the 1980s allowed the Navy to incorporate many new innovations in the ship. One of the most significant changes in its firepower was the addition of 2 new types of missile, the Tomahawk long-range cruise missile and the Harpoon medium-range anti-ship missile.
For the battleship, the change in its role from the 50s to the way it is now is its ability to deliver that strike warfare punch with the Tomahawk missile. The Harpoon missile is also extremely capable in the anti-ship role. Our ability to project power well over the horizon has been radically changed been revolutionized by the Harpoon and the Tomahawk weapon system. Back in the 50s, that may have been on the drawing boards or it may have been just a dream, but now with the Harpoons up here and the Tomahawk behind me, that's now a reality.
The Tomahawk cruise missile operates much like a small unmanned jet plane. It is capable of striking pinpoint targets such as command bunkers due to its advanced TERCOM guidance. This guidance system uses terrain-following radar and visual imagery to guide the missile to within several yards of its target. The main advantage this weapon offers over the battleship's traditional guns is its greater range. This gives the battleship strike features previously found only in aircraft carriers.
Tomahawk weapon system provides a battle group commander with a capability to strike targets far inland. In the past, that was aircraft were used to do that. Now you can use a missile. It's cheaper than an airplane and a pilot. It's unmanned, so you don't have the possibility of a downed pilot and a political situation where a hostage is involved. They're very accurate. They're impervious to incoming air defenses, as long as they don't hit you. They're not afraid. It's an unmanned robot. It's a flying bomb. And it gives the battle group commander the added punch of a strike capability without the hazards that are involved in flying an aircraft into enemy defenses.
The new missiles are hardly evident on so massive a vessel as the Battleship. The Tomahawk missiles are contained in special launchers called ABLs, or Armored Box Launchers. Each of these self-contained units encloses 4 Tomahawk missiles and protects the missile until launch from the hard sea environment. Another important change in the battleship's armament is its new air defense weapons. In World War II, the battleship was protected from aircraft by dozens of automatic cannons. These weapons required hundreds of crewmen, one of the reasons for the battleship's high operating costs. The threat to battleships today comes not so much from aircraft, but from anti-ship missiles. To protect against the missile threat, the battleships were fitted with a new weapon system called Seaways.
Battleship carries 4 close-in weapon systems, or Seaways, and it's a rapid-fire machine gun, basically, like a Gatling gun. There are 6 barrels, and the magazine holds in excess of 1,500 rounds, and it's designed to throw out a wall of lead, if you will, against an incoming missile. It has a hardened bullet, 20-millimeter bullet, and it's designed to penetrate the warhead of an incoming missile and detonate it away from the ship. It's a close-in, last-ditch self-defense weapon. We can't defend any other ships with it. We carry 4 on board.
These sophisticated new missiles and radar-directed guns are controlled from deep within the ship. The battleship's new Combat Information Center bears very little resemblance to the methods of command in World War II. These computer nerve centers gather data from the ship's own sensors, neighboring ships, and even satellites to provide the captain with an up-to-the-minute picture of opposing forces. Such systems are an essential ingredient in handling weapons with a range of Tomahawk and Harpoon.
The battleship's capabilities are incredible. For a ship of her age, which is almost 50 years old, she's a brand new ship in many respects. We have the capability of shooting Tomahawk, both in the anti-surface, like we did against Iraq, and in anti-shipping. We carry Harpoon missiles, and of course we have the big guns. We have the 5-inch, which are superb against small surface targets and have a limited anti-air warfare capability, and the 16-inch guns, which we use to great effect against Iraq, are still a viable weapon system today.
2, 1, fire.
In World War II, the Iowa class were called fast battleships. One of their prime requirements was high cruising speed to find and attack the enemy first. This feature would prove useful again in 1990 in a new theater of the world. With the invasion of Kuwait in August 1990, the United States needed a military presence in the Gulf to warn Saddam Hussein from advancing any further.
When it became necessary for the U.S. to make a very quick and rapid commitment to the Persian Gulf, to at least show that we meant business, the battleship Wisconsin was dispatched to the Gulf. 16 days after she left Norfolk, she was there. That's incredible. That's very high speed when you consider where the ship had to come from. And then when she arrived, the very presence and the ability for the nation to use her was a characteristic that the battleship was fundamentally designed to do in this modern age. So that idea of presence and the influence of potential use, rather than necessarily, in fact, using it.
A 50-year-old warship may seem an odd choice to carry out Navy missions in the missile age, but the Wisconsin and her sister ships demonstrated the versatility of this classic design.
We look at the Wisconsin as something that was built in '43 and steam-driven. You see old guns, and you'll think of an old ship. But she can be employed against the most modern surface combatants, and she just completely demonstrated her worth during Desert Storm. It was the Wisconsin's team that coordinated over 200 launches of Tomahawk missiles in the Gulf. We can operate effectively as a flagship. We replenished ships at sea. We fixed ships on a routine basis. We provided medical, dental, supply support, and it just goes on. As far as the combat effectiveness, there's no other ship like her. When we came into the Gulf in August, we were the ship, we were the platform of the United States that could project into Iraq right there, right now. We didn't need to have a long logistics train coming from the States. We didn't have to wait for C-5s full of parts and people. We were there. We were ready to go.
The Wisconsin entered the history books yet again in January 1991, spearheading the air attack of Iraq. From her deck, Tomahawk cruise missiles were launched to clear a path for the strike aircraft that would follow. Salvo after salvo of Tomahawk missiles left the Wisconsin's launches for pinpoint strikes hundreds of miles away against key Iraqi targets. Nor were Wisconsin's guns silent for long. When the land attack into Kuwait began, the Wisconsin was able to provide pinpoint fire support against Iraqi field fortifications and other hard targets. Later in 1991, with the Gulf War over, the battleships again were slated for the mothballs. Peacetime economic pressures, not enemy weapons, have long been their most potent nemesis. Idle yet again, these imposing masters of the sea await another time of crisis when the call will ring out for the return of the battleships.
Thank you.